All right, Kierkegaard Part 2, Works of Love. All right, so remember last time I left you on a big suspense, right? We talked about the cat. Somebody loves the cat. What cat? What? Which cat do you love?
Oh, somebody was showing their cat, and look at the cat. Chris,
I love cats too, which is why I'm going to interrupt. Nieves. Oh, it's so adorable. Nieves, speak so we can see you on the big screen.
Hi.
More. Tell us about your cat.
Uh, this is Princess Leia,
Why can't I see you?
uh, and her brother, who is next to me, is Luke Skywalker.
We don't see them, we just see you.
Oh,
There we go. Oh,
here you go.
yes. All right.
There.
Oh, very cute. Thank you, Nieves, for this wonderful break. Okay, sorry, I can't resist cats. I have one here. This is Bastet. So, yeah. All right, moving on. Kierkegaard. Where was I? Okay. Yes, so last time we talked about the tree, right? So the lover as a tree, meaning that we are, right? Love is to be seen as a gift, not as something you get, right? Even though most of us, when we look for love, we're looking to get something, right? What we learned last time was love is about giving, right? And you love because it is in your nature to love. No matter what is happening around you, you love because that's who you are, right? You don't necessarily reflect back what is going on. You love because that's part of who you are. You are faithful to your nature, right? And then we talked about what happens, right, when here you are loving, 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 bearing fruit, and your beloved is like a dry tree, right? And you're not getting anything from them. In fact, they're pulling you down. They're making things difficult. You're in a desert. How do you survive a situation where you're the only one giving and your beloved is not able to give you what you need, right, to feel sustained in the relationship? And Kierkegaard here again is not going to tell us you should stay or you should leave, right? He's not into telling us what to do. He's just saying, look, you can leave, you can stay, I don't care. I'm not a moral philosopher, right? But he will say, if you choose to stay, here are the resources you need to know that you have, right? Most of us are not even aware of the infinite resources that are at our disposal when we learn to tap into them, right? So, what Kierkegaard is going to teach us today, and I think this is one of the most important lectures in this class, right? What we're about to learn today is really if I choose to stay, what are the tools available? What are the resources available? How do I navigate this drought or this wilderness, right? So, okay. So remember last time I told you Kierkegaard believes that within us we have those resources, that within us there is a deeper dimension. Right? Remember for Kierkegaard, reality, there are two dimensions, right? I'm going to write it down here again. There's the physical realm, right? And then there's the metaphysical realm. There's the material and the spiritual, same thing, right? Or what he calls the temporal or the eternal. Okay, so we need to review these concepts to understand what he's about to say today, right? Unlike Plato, who says there's the material here and then the spiritual is out there, Kierkegaard believes that the spiritual is within the material. The metaphysical is within the physical. The eternal is within the temporal, right? Temporal means the material realm of time, right? Matter. Eternal is not some afterlife, it's now. It's a dimension here and now, which is divine, which is profound, which we can tap into, right? In order to get what we need, right? So he's really talking, and so the when he talks about this inner source, he's really talking about this deeper metaphysical divine dimension, which according to him is not somewhere in another galaxy, or it's not afterlife, it's now, it's within us, and we have the power to tap into it, right? We can actually tap right now into divine energy. Basically, that's what Kierkegaard is saying. We don't need to wait until we die to be in connection with God, we can already now tap into this divine energy which is within us, which he calls the quiet lake or the source, and then we can gain the resources we need, right? So last time I left you hanging, right, as to how we can tap into it, right? Most of us, in fact, not even aware we have it, right? We look inside, we're like, I just see, anger, resentment, rage, right? I don't see no source or no divine nothing, right? So we have to learn what is the proper attitude we need to adopt. How do we do this, right? So today we're going to learn this. So first of all, first thing we learn with Kierkegaard is you don't have to be a Christian to tap into the divine source within yourself. That's the first thing I want to be very clear. Even though he calls it Christian love, what he means is simply to love in the way that Christ taught, right? Or lived. It doesn't mean you have to be a Christian to follow in Christ's footsteps, right? You can do it on your own, right? So you don't have to be a Christian to tap into this dimension, because for Kierkegaard, this dimension is an existential dimension. If you're a human being, you have it, right? And so how do we tap into it? So what we're going to learn today is that there's a certain positioning you have to do in order to begin tapping into it. And does anybody know what is this positioning based on the text we read today? What is it that we need to learn to do, which will actually bring us into contact with this inner divine dimension? Very good, Hat, right? So the attitude we need to learn is hope. So if we learn to hope, right, according to Kierkegaard, this will create a channel between us and that dimension. We're going to be able to tap into it. So first we need to talk about what is hope, right? And he's going to immediately tell us what it isn't so that we're not confused. So let's go to page 235. No, not 235, sorry, 237. Okay, 237, second paragraph. This is what it means. If you're there, put your hand in the screen. Okay, great. All right, so he's now going to define hope. This is what it means to hope all things, right? But in love. Oh, by the way, before I go further, this whole last section of the book where he's talking about love builds up, love believes, love hopes. This is actually a commentary on the writings of Paul in the letter that he wrote. So Paul is one of the he was originally a Jewish teacher who converted to Christianity back in the time of Jesus, right? Right after Jesus died, he became one of the most famous Christian orators, teachers, writers. And he wrote a beautiful passage on love, right? And this is in his letter to the Corinthians. And he's basically, Kierkegaard is drawing from that passage, right? Where it says love is patient and love is kind. It does not boast. It does not envy. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. This is the passage, right? That he's basing his writing on right here. So here he's focusing on the one thing that Paul said, which is love hopes all things. And he's going to write a whole chapter, right, on this. Okay, so what is hope? Here we are. This is what it means to hope all things. But in love, to hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men. Okay, so first thing we're learning, hope is not just some wishful thinking. It's relational. It's a loving action. Okay, we tend to think of hope as a feeling. Oh, I feel hopeful. Oh, I'm happy now. Okay, no. Hope is not a feeling. Hope is an act of love. Right? And so we have to see, what does that mean that my hope is an act of love? Can I create hope? Right? Is hope more than a feeling? That's what we're going to learn. So he continues. To hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men, that in relationship to them, hoping for them, he continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Okay, kind of convoluted sentence. So let's try to analyze it. First thing we learn, right? Let me write it in the chat. First thing we saw, hope is relational. It's an act of love. Second thing we're learning is that hope is for you, for the other, right? It's not about yourself, okay? So what would it mean that hope is not about what I want? Hope is for them, Can anyone give me an illustration of what it would look like to hope not for me, but for them? What would it look like? So let's imagine your lover or your beloved, I don't know, has a terrible addiction problem, right? To heroin, God forbid, right? And this very dangerous drug, right? Now here you are, and of course this addiction is causing a lot of problems, obviously, right? He's not working, he's always, slumped over in a chair, right? And you're suffering, and you're sick of this. What would it look like to hope for them? Anybody know? I'm listening.
Can you repeat that, Professor?
Yes. So you're having problems with your beloved, right? Make sure you mute yourself, Brown. Thank you. You're having problems with your beloved. They have an addiction problem. For example, everything is chaos in the house. They're not working anymore. You're miserable, right? What would it mean to hope for them? Okay, Hot, go ahead.
I think to hope for them, you could say something like, I hope they maybe like go to therapy or something, like just hope for them to get better in a way so that they'll be in a place where they don't rely on heroin to make them happy or whatever they're doing.
Okay, so you're hoping mostly, right? It's not any, and why are you hoping they will get better? Tell me, Hot.
Because I don't want them to die.
Because what? You don't
I
want
don't want them to die.
And let me go further. Let me test you a little bit. Why don't you want them to die?
Because I love them.
Okay, and if they died, how would you feel?
Very sad.
Okay, right, very good. Okay, thank you, Hot. Right, so in many ways, right, when we're in a difficult situation, we hope they'll get better so I can feel better, right? So in the case of the addiction, man, get your act together so we can have a normal life around here again, right? So very often we hope for ourselves, but what Hot was saying very nicely, right, this is about the other. For your sake, I want you to stop being addicted. And you can take this on any level. Imagine now the person is violent towards you, right? Verbally or even physically. What would it mean to hope for them in this context? So you're definitely miserable and it's all their fault. I get that. What would it mean in that context to hope for them? Let's make sure we fine tune this idea. Rivera?
I guess in that context, it would be a continuous hope. So if you're continually hoping for change, it's not going to happen. There's no possibility.
So
they have to want to change the good. So you can't hope that for them. They have to hope that for themselves.
Okay, where in the text do you
I
see?
guess make it happen.
Careful, where in the text do you see what you're saying? Is that what Kierkegaard is saying?
I saw possibility, and that's where I got confused.
Okay, we'll get there. So here, remember, this is something you are doing. They're still over there. Here you are, by yourself, hoping for them. What does it look like? Brown, help us.
So you're just hoping that they will come to a certain understanding, like you're hoping for them that they will so to speak level up, if you will.
And why is it important for them to level up? Like
Because that shows growth, and growth is important.
very good, right? In other words, instead of saying, I want you to stop treating me like this because I'm miserable and I'm sick of you and you need to respect me, right? You're saying, for your sake, something needs to change. This is not good for you, right? This is not good for you. This is not good for us. Our relationship is suffering. So this is not even about me, right? So see how the hope is not wishful thinking, right? That's the second point I want to make here, right? Hope is not wishful thinking. It's not about you, right? It's about the other's growth. Yeah, we'll talk about that. It's about the other's growth, right? So that's the second distinction, right? First of all, hope is not an emotion. Did I write this in the chat? I'm trying to see where I was. Hope. I'm trying to see what I wrote. Okay, so I'm gonna write it here again. Right, hope is not an emotion, right? It's a work of love. That's the first thing we said. Now we're learning hope is not wishful thinking. It's not about you. It's for the other. And now let's go into the passage that was perplexing Rivera, right? He continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. So let's look at some of these words. What does it mean to be partial? Let's look at that word partial. When you're partial to someone, how do you treat them? What does it mean to be partial? Anybody give us a definition for the rest of the class? Brown, oh,
Favorability, a little favorability
exactly.
in the mix.
Absolutely. To be partial is to favor, right? Is to prefer, right? That's what to be partial. So if I'm partial to my friends, I prefer them to you, for example, right? So when he says this, hope is the ability to be partial for the possibility of the good in the other person. What is he saying? Can anyone translate this? What does it mean that to hope is to be infinitely partial or favoring or preferring the possibility of the good in the other person? Anyone want to give a wild guess as to what he's talking about here in this sentence? No? Everybody's confused? Okay, I want you to give this a try. I'm not going to tell you. Somebody has to speak up. So if you know, tell us so we can move on. What does it mean to be partial? To show preference to their possibility of the good. So this is not the obvious good, it's the possible good. Nieves, help us out.
Maybe to like show them, like give them the benefit of the doubt that you wouldn't give to others.
Very good, right? Absolutely. So to hope is to focus on the good rather than on the bad. That's what it means to hope, right? To be infinitely partial, meaning you prefer, you show preference, you focus yourself, right, on the good that is possible with them. It's not obvious. They're not good right now. They're an addict, they're violent, they're this, they're that, there's no good. But what you're choosing to do when you hope, and it's a decision, is to focus on the possibilities for the good that lie in them. So you're in a way focusing on what they could become, right? So let me write this down. So number 3, hope is the ability to see the good that they could become and focusing on that. That's what it means to be infinitely partial, right, to the good. Okay, so this is really, really interesting, right? So in other words, so how this would look, right? For example, actually, let me ask you, what would it look like to focus on the good in the context of, suppose you're with somebody whose violence is really the worst, right? I think one of the worst difficulties we encounter in a relationship. Person is violent verbally, maybe even physically. What does it mean to focus on the possibility of the good in them? What would it look like? Hot, go ahead.
Maybe go with them to therapy or something.
Well, how is that a focus on the possibility of the good?
Because you're being hopeful that they could change. Like, let's say they're willing to change. You could, help them through that rather than, if somebody's like facing something like abuse in a relationship, whether it's verbal or physical, some people will leave, but I guess if you're looking at it from a hopeful perspective, like you're going to stay with them until they get better.
Okay, so let's notice something, right? She says, here's what we could do. Hope is not yet doing anything, right? Hope is it's an inner thing, right? And I think what Critchell is saying here in the chat is very true. We're very close here, and I'll talk about her to the girl in the Song of Songs, right? So here, he's not telling you, here, you need to take some steps to help them change. First, you have to develop this inner vision. This is an inner work that you have to do when you're in this crisis. And the inner work is simply, I focus on the possibility of the good. So before you even do that, Hot, what would you need to see in the other person? Go ahead. Yeah.
You would have to see you would have to see another side of them, not that side that they're always showing to you. You have to dig deeper and find the side of them that's good.
You got it. You got it. Hope is the ability to dig deeper and to see what they could be, not the side, a different side of them, right? Nieves, do you want to add to this? Nieves, are you there? Are you still with us?
Oh, I accidentally left my hand up from before.
All right, no worries. Okay, so excellent, right, Hot. So that's what we're learning here, right? Hope is really you. You're doing it. Not even, it's an inner work where you are beginning to, where you are in a way disciplining yourself to see the possibilities of the good in that person, what they could become, who they could be, who they are deep inside, the other side, right? Which exists, right? This is also there, right? Everybody is both, as he says in the next page, right? If you read on page 238, he has a whole section where he says, yeah, it's true. Somebody can be a complete jerk till the end of their life, but it's also true that people change. That's basically what he's saying here. And so which war, which battle do you want to wage, right? Do you want to, there is a 50% chance that things could change, right? And so he's inviting us to choose the right 50%, right? So that's what we're seeing here is that is this powerful action, right? Where we are, it's not a feeling, we're choosing to do this out of love. It's not about us, it's about them. And finally, hope is a certain vision. It's the ability to see beyond the obvious, everything that the person could be, that you could be together, that the relationship could become. It's a vision, right? And what Kierkegaard is saying is that we need, before we can do anything about it, we need to cultivate this vision. And then things will begin to happen. So this leads me to my second section, right? So some of you might say, okay, this is nice. I see the potential for good, but what is this going to change, right? And what Kierkegaard is going to teach us right now is the power of hope. So this is the second part of what I want to talk about, the transformative power of hope. In other words, what Kierkegaard is going to tell us in the next few pages is that hope is not just, some fancy you have in your head. When you begin to cultivate hope, it has an effect. It has an impact on the relationship beyond you doing anything, right? Like Hat was saying, you should take him to a therapist. You don't even need to do that. Just being in that state and cultivating this vision is enough to begin the transformation. So how does this transformation work? I'm going to give you two arguments. I'm going to give you the psychological argument. And B, I'll give you the philosophical argument that Kierkegaard gives us. But you'll understand already very well from the psychological. Okay, let's imagine. So for a while I taught 8th grade, which was the worst year of my life. It's very hard to teach these kids. They're like mutants, they're like not quite human. They're between the beast and the, I don't know. So anyways, so I was teaching these kids and they were just unbearable. And there was one particular kid who was just making a mess of my classroom. And so what would it look like for me to have tried the Kierkegaard approach to his bad behavior? What would it look like? What could I begin to do? And what effect would it have? So I have already tried it, so I can tell you the result, but I'm curious. What do you think I would need to do with this kid who's just always talking, throwing things, creating chaos in my classroom? What would it take for me to begin a transformation? Nieves, go ahead. And then I'll go to Malone. Go ahead, Nieves.
You could try to see the kid's potential and then help him see his potential.
Okay, very good, right? Focus on the good, right? This is what Malone is saying. Ignore the bad, praise the good. Anybody else? Brown, what do you have to say?
Patience. A lot of patience.
For sure. Absolutely, right? So this is what I did, right? I called him over and he was a little older than the other kids and he was actually pretty good. I was teaching English at the time. I was like, look, it's very clear to me that you know English pretty well. You're way above the others, so focusing on the good, which was actually true. I said, listen, let's make a deal. I won't bother you, you won't bother me. I said, I won't call on you, I won't belittle you, I won't, treat you like the rest of the students. I'm gonna respect that you already know, and I'm gonna treat you like an adult. And in return, like, give me some peace. It worked. The kid was quiet. he started to help me in the classroom. He became my little helper or whatever. He was amazing. We had a great time, right? So, so you can see psychologically, right? We see this very well with kids, right? When you start to focus on the good, it actually blossoms, right? The good, you can actually make the good blossom, especially in a child. It's much easier than a spouse, right? Which is more, but the child, you can see already how naturally the good grows and blossoms when you see it. Just seeing it, just telling him this is who you are, boom, he became, right? So psychologically, we see already how powerful this attitude of seeing the good or hoping is, right? And so although it's a little harder with a spouse, because a spouse is not as malleable as a child, right? It still has a powerful impact when you can focus on the good and ignore the bad and praise the good and bring out the good through your words, through your vision. Slowly, slowly, the spouse can actually begin, and I've seen this happen, right? The transformation can begin to take place, right? So psychologically, we know already that this works, right? But then I want to bring in the other argument that Kierkegaard gives us, which is the philosophical argument. So this is how he says this. Go on page 233. It's a very tiny quote, but very rich. So go to the next to last paragraph, page 233. In the middle of that next to last paragraph, you have the sentence, hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. If you're here, put your hand in the screen. Okay. So next to last paragraph, page 233, middle. Make sure you underline this. Hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. In other words, what he's saying here is that hope is a bridge. Hope is a channel between the eternal dimension and the temporal dimension. In other words, as you begin to hope, what is actually happening on the deeper layers of life or of existence is you are beginning to connect to this inner source. That is what is happening. In other words, as you practice hoping, in the beginning, mechanically, you don't feel anything. You're tired, you're drained, you're angry, right? But you're practicing, focusing on the good and so forth. As you do this, something will begin to shift in you. You will begin to tap into this deeper layer, which is there, this deeper divine, right, source. And you will begin to feel yourself stronger, more loving, more, and because you're more loving, wiser, right? More compassionate, more enlightened as to what to do next. So this is really what is happening on the deeper metaphysical level, right? As you begin to hope outwardly, you're practicing this, you don't feel it yet, but you're trying to do it. You're actually creating this dimension and you are beginning to tap into these deeper resources. And as you tap into these resources, miracles will happen first within yourself. Something in you will begin to shift. You'll begin to be more compassionate towards your spouse. You'll begin to feel stronger. You'll begin to feel more energy, more hope, right? You'll begin to, as you become more loving, you become more insightful. You will know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. You will know what steps to take, right? There's a profound wisdom in love, right? As you begin to truly love, you also develop a certain wisdom as to what to do next and how to do it and so forth. And so the miracle is not like something happening outside. The miracle sprouts or springs up in you. And as you're becoming, as you're connecting to this source, as you're connecting to this divine source within yourself, you are gaining more love, more peace, more joy, more wisdom, more courage, more strength, and this is pouring out into the relationship, and that is what is creating the transformation, right? So it's not some magic like when I hope, boom, I can change you and control you, right? You are the one changing, and as you are changing, your partner is changing. We have enormous influence on each other. As you shift, they will shift, right? Instead of mirroring them, do your own shift and watch them follow, right? So that's the deeper metaphysical thing that is going on as you're simply practicing hope, right? Okay, and here's what he says here about the miracle. Let's go to page 235. Okay, go to the last. Okay, see the big paragraph on 235? You see the dash towards the end, but one never gets. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay, go to the dash on the first paragraph of 235. Okay, here he says that the one never gets possibility out of this. Possibility, the miracle, right? Now he's talking about the miracle of transformation through hope. The miracle, which is so infinitely fragile, right? The most tender shoot in springtime is not so fragile, so infinitely delicate, right? The finest woven linen is not so delicate, and yet brought into being, shaped by the very help of the eternal, it is nonetheless stronger than anything else if it is the possibility of the good. So he's saying, see, your hope feels so fragile, right? You yourself are feeling so insecure, but you're trying to do this, right? And he's saying, as you do this, you are creating something very strong, lasting, powerful, and miraculous, right? That's what he's saying. So before we go in the last section, any questions on this notion of hope? Anybody feel like they would have trouble applying this, or any counter arguments or objections? This is the moment to discuss this a little bit. We have some time. What would be some of the problems you would encounter in trying to do this? Or do you think it works? Do you, or doesn't? Okay, so Malone. Okay, Malone, tell us in person what you're saying here in the chat. Malone? Where are you, Malone? You're muted. Speak up. You're muted. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
I was just saying that's a lot of pressure on the one person to do the work if the other person is not even there yet.
So you say pressure, but when you're tapping into this dimension, you're really gaining something, right? I mean, you are in a way, so this is the beauty, right, of, even though this is all, you are doing all the work initially, but as you're doing this work, you are connecting to your deeper self, right? So in a way, this is an opportunity for you to get to know that part of yourself, right? To get to connect to that part of yourself. Once you've connected to it, it becomes easy. Easy in the sense that it's not overwhelming, right? It becomes something natural. You're able to do it because you're receiving these resources that you didn't have before. So yes, it's hard if you don't have the source, obviously. But if you're now tapping into this enormous source of wisdom, courage, love, and so forth, which Kierkegaard says exists within us, then it doesn't become overwhelming. It's still hard, but it feels natural, right? It feels like something that I can do now. Does that make sense, Malone? Yeah. So I know we're taught, oh, let's not enable the other, and they should be doing their own, they should get their shit together, right? I think this is true, but sometimes we need to create the environment necessary for them to be able to do that. This is not about you fixing the other. This is you about creating the environment that they need to change themselves, right? So it's not even about taking them to a therapist, like Hot was saying, right? This would be encroaching on what they need to do. This is you just creating a nurturing environment, an environment where they start to breathe and emerge out of their darkness, and then they can begin to take their own steps. But very often people don't have the environment that they need to be able to take control of their lives, and this is simply about creating that nurturing environment, not about fixing them. Does that make sense, Malone? Good. So let's see, who had saw another question pop up while I was talking. Who was it? Now it's gone. Rivera, go ahead.
So as far as relationship and overcoming it, so you're trying to say for the author saying as far as relationship crisis, for the crisis to, I guess, overcome, you have to do better within yourself so they can follow in order for the relationship to work?
It starts with you. In other words, what he's saying is it starts with you practicing this vision of hope for the other. But as you're doing that, something will shift within yourself. Try it and you'll see. you'll become more loving, more compassionate. And this moment where you start to feel more loving and compassionate, which you weren't before, this is the sign you've connected to something deeper. You're now connecting to your source. You're receiving this extra love and compassion. Does that make sense? And then as you're shifting, yes, they will begin to shift. Does that make sense, Rivera?
Yeah, but I'm trying to compare it with the whole drug situation that you said earlier. What if I don't do drugs, but they do? So I'm changing myself to do drugs so they don't?
No.
I'm confused.
It's so funny. Okay. No, what you're doing is you're changing. See, when they're doing drugs, you're feeling like you're starting to hate them, right? You're like, you're not, or you're in despair, or you're really depressed, right, over the situation. What Kierkegaard is saying is that as you begin to become hopeful, practicing this, seeing the good in them, what they could become, you will become more hopeful. You will become more joyful. You will become more compassionate. You see what's happening? So it's not you're changing your behavior, it's your emotions are shifting. Your emotions are becoming more loving, more joyful. And as you're shifting emotionally, that's creating an atmosphere in the relationship which is conducive to them making a change. Make sense? When they feel like they're next to someone who's loving, compassionate, joyful, then it's easier for them to, begin to shift. Now, addiction is a little hard example because once you're really addicted, you can't see anything. It's like you almost have to drag them and be forceful. So it's a bad example. But if it's a person who's just struggling with bad temper and so forth, yes, as you're shifting internally, as your emotions are becoming more loving, they'll catch on. Does that make sense? Better now, Rivera?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I was just like, whoa, that's not a good message, but okay, I got it.
Very good. Any other questions or concerns? Because this is not easy, right? First of all, it's all on you, and it's not easy to do this, right? I mean, most of us, when we're in a situation like this, we leave, right? So Kierkegaard is like, you can leave, but if you need to stay, if you want to stay, here's what could happen, right? Here's where this can lead, right? Possibly, it's not 100% sure, but this is a possibility, right? Okay, so let's conclude now on this, the strange title, right? Love hopes all things. The title is longer than that, and is never put to shame. Okay, let me add this. Okay, so what does it mean? So now what he's talking about here is the scenario where you've hoped, you've done your part, you've created the environment, and they still don't change, and they end up leaving you, and it turns out like it doesn't work out, right? So this is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, they change, you have a beautiful relationship going well, but this is not 100%, right? Some people might not work, they walk away. And yet Kierkegaard is saying, when you love in that way, when you hope in that way, your hope is never put to shame. In other words, when they leave you, you're not in a way put to shame. So what does that mean? How does it work that even though you hoped, they left, you failed, the relationship didn't work out, yet he says, you have nothing to be ashamed of, you have not lost anything. What does he mean by that? Hot, help us.
So what I think he means by that, a lot of times, like, especially nowadays, people say like, oh, he or she stayed or whatever, they're so stupid. But I guess what he's saying is like, don't feel that way because, like you, at least, on your end, you tried, you were willing to make it work. It didn't work. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, but at least, you have that strength and like, good things are to come. Like, it doesn't get worse. Like, eventually you'll find, like, that means that person just wasn't for you.
Okay, so almost, although that's not the argument he's making, right? But you almost had it, Hot, that what he meant by it's never put to shame. So the person left, what you're saying, Hot, is, okay, someone else will come. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, even if no one else comes, even if you wasted 20 years, right, with this person, helping, loving, there's no loss. No loss. What does he mean? Williams, help us.
I'm guessing now because you kind of switch it up. I'm thinking maybe she still never lost herself. She just lost someone else. She still kept her hope, and she's like she said, she still like Hot says, she still tried her best and stuff.
Okay,
I may be wrong.
You're close. You're very close. Let's see if anyone touches it. But you both are on the right track. Brown, help us.
You haven't lost because you've loved, period.
Ah, there you go, Brown. We see, you need to live through life a little bit like Brown to be able to come up with that interpretation. Very good, Brown. Absolutely. Right. Let me explain what she meant, right? Yes, you lost the person, but you found love, right? You have connected to this deeper way of loving. You have never loved this deeply, in fact, right? In other words, the other person, even though it was difficult, they in a way pushed you to go deeper within yourself. So you might have lost the person, but you have loved, right? And in that sense, you have known, you have tasted true love, the kind of love that you had to tap into to love this person. You never would have tapped into if they hadn't been that difficult. So that person actually helped you connect, helped you realize how deeply you could love, help you really broaden, enlarge your capacity to love in a way that no one else did before, right? And so even though they left, you have found, you have tasted true love, right? And in that sense, your love is never put to shame, right? They left, but you are wealthy with this enlarged heart, with this deeper capacity to love, with this deeper capacity for forgiveness, for compassion. The other forced you to become like that, right? And in a way, they leave, but you are now even richer, right, than when they were there. Does that make sense? Everybody follows what I'm saying? Put your hand if you're seeing what I'm saying. So, yes, you lost the beloved, but you have found the love within yourself that you didn't even know was there. You have discovered that you are capable of such deep love, right? That you never thought you were capable of, right? Unless, it's funny because we never really get to that spring or that source unless we go through difficulties. If your marriage is smooth and wonderful, yeah, you love, but you don't love as deeply as you could, right? It is the crisis and the hardships which broaden and enlarge your heart, right? It's the difficulties which force you to tap into this source and which helps you become aware of it even, right? So in a way, the difficulties shaped you, matured you, made you a deeper lover. And so even they left, you are now so much better than before in that sense, right? So let me write this down. So even though they left, you found yourself. They left, but you found yourself, right? But you found your deeper, more mature, more loving, more compassionate self that you didn't even know existed, right? So in a way, the difficulty, the hardship has matured you as a man or as a woman, and you emerge a better man, a better woman out of it. If you continue to love, obviously, if you start to become resentful and bitter, it's not going to work, right? So if you, even in the breakup, even they leave you, they betray you, you continue to hope for them, you will emerge out of the whole situation unscathed, undamaged, and a better person for it, right? That's what it means, that hoping all things is never put to shame, right? You emerge if you continue, right? If you continue to hope, right? Throughout the breakup, right? That's very hard, right? You will actually emerge unscathed, right? Undamaged, and a better person. And that's the idea here that Kierkegaard means by saying, love hopes all things and yet is never put to shame. Okay, any questions on that? We have 6 minutes for concerns and questions and clarifications. No? Clear? Clear but not easy, right? This is the, like they say in Christianity, this is the narrow path, right? This is not an easy path, but it's a very, it's an interesting path, right? It's not easy, but you really begin to discover things about yourself when you stick it out, right? In our culture, we don't learn to stick it out, right? We learn, to move from thing to thing. What Kierkegaard is saying is that to stick it out, you will actually develop parts of yourself that you can't develop if you don't learn to stick it out, right? So this ability to, like he said in the text, continuously hope, right? This ability to stand for your relationship, even though it's going to hell, this will really shape you in a way that just leaving won't, right? There are whole dimensions of your own being that you will never discover if you just keep on moving like a butterfly from relationship to relationship, right? There is one moment you have to just stick it out. And at that moment, you will reach into the deeper recesses of your own being. You will discover who you could be, right? You will discover your true substance, right? And so that's the invitation here. Kierkegaard is not saying stay or go. He's saying to stay you will really get to discover all that you could be in a way that leaving not gonna do it for you. Okay, no questions? Great. All right, so next time we will be starting. We don't have a test, right? We had just one, right? Somebody help me. No test, right? Just making sure. I don't want to think.
No test.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So next time we're doing Buber, I believe. So all you have to do is listen to the audio on Buber and then read the first text, and we will do the first reading assignment right on next Tuesday. So I hope you enjoy Buber and the recording. I will see you all next week. Bye, everybody. If you still have a question, you can stay, but I will